Honorable Timothy Harris, uses this forum to update you and the nation on matters of national interest. He's also here to engage representatives of what we call the Fourth Estate, that is, the media. Just to make two brief announcements before we begin officially. There will be no Leadership Matters program this evening for those of you who look for it every Tuesday. Instead, a rebroadcast of the press conference, this press conference, will be aired. Additionally, the Prime Minister will host a special church service on Sunday in celebration of his birthday on December 6th. So you'll get more details about that. I know many would like to celebrate this special occasion with him. Just to let you know that we are already joined by several key officials. Members of Cabinet present here today are Deputy Prime Minister the Honorable Sean Richards. We also have the Honorable Mark Brantley, who is also the Premier of Nevis. We have the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet and the Honorable Wendy Phipps. We are also joined by Ambassadors His Excellency Vance Amry and His Excellency Ian Patches Liburd. Also in our midst, our Financial Secretary, Hilary Hazel, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Mr. Osmond Petty. We have the Accountant General, Mr. Levi Bradshaw, National Security Advisor, Retired Major General Stuart Saunders, Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, Medical Chief of Staff at the JNF General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, Commissioner of Police, Mr. Hilroy Brandy, Lieutenant Colonel J. Anthony Comrie from the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force. We have Director of Marine Resources, Mr. Mark Williams. We have the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Ms. Raquel Brown. We have just been joined by the Honorable John L. Powell. And several other persons continue to walk through the door, and you probably will be able to hear about them shortly. We're now ready to begin officially the Prime Minister's press conference, and Dr. Timothy Harris will be joining us shortly to give you an update in his initial presentation, and then the floor will be open to take your questions. We're asking persons to keep their questions brief and limit yourselves to 2 questions, a main question and a follow-up, and we'll take it in a round-robin fashion so we can get in as many interactions as possible this afternoon. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the Honorable Timothy Harris.
Good afternoon to all. Welcome to another edition of the Prime Minister's press conference. I want to recognize the presence of my cabinet colleagues this afternoon and to thank them for coming. I want to thank Ms. Jackie Bryan, who is holding the fort today, and to thank her for the necessary facilitations and courtesies she has extended in the absence of Valencia Grant, the press secretary. It is for me a pleasure to be able to update you on matters of national interest. And my goal, of course, is to have an open and transparent relationship with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis on all matters of state. A major matter on the national calendar is the 2021 federal budget. We are advanced in our finalization of the 2021 budget. As we have done since 2015, it is our intention to deliver the 2021 budget way in advance of the statutory deadline, which is 60 days after the commencement of the financial year to which the budget relates. There should be the laying of the estimates. In this regard, I am hopeful that with the grace of God, I will be able to deliver the 2021 budget address on Tuesday, the 15th of December, 2020. In this year's budget address, I will outline programs to chart the recovery effort made necessary by the impact of COVID-19. COVID-19 is still with us. The entire world has been scarred by it. Its impact has been brutal on health systems and people around the world. As we speak, COVID-19 has affected more than 62.2 million persons, and it has caused about 1.4 million deaths globally. There are millions who have been put out of work, airlines seeking bailouts, and the cruise industry has drastically slowed. In fact, cruise business is literally at a standstill in our part of the world. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have fared better than most in terms of COVID-19 cases and associated deaths. Luckily for us, we have no deaths on record caused by COVID-19. We have 22 cases, the lowest number of COVID-19 cases of any independent state in the hemisphere. And we have 3, I am advised, which are active. The economic impact of COVID-19 has been severe all over. Here in St. Kitts, thousands lost their jobs. Some persons and businesses are experiencing financial difficulties, and we shall respond appropriately in the 2021 budget. We have to reprioritize what we want to do, both as a people and as a country. Had it not been for our prudent financial management, starting early o'clock in 2015, leading up to the advent of COVID-19, the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis would have been destroyed and our people overwhelmed. Our strong fiscal buffers then gave us the financial space to respond. Thankfully, our government responded very quickly and decisively. We announced, for example, a $120 million stimulus package, the biggest and the most comprehensive in our region. This helped to lessen the suffering in our country and help many to keep their heads above water as we work assiduously to reopen all areas of the economic sector over time, while recognizing that we must put the health and safety of our people first. In other words, our government adopted a life-saving strategy. Life first, everything else thereafter. To date, we are very pleased of some of the outcomes. For example, all of our export manufacturing plants are operating under COVID-19 protocols. About 90% of the employees at our main export manufacturing plants, such as Jaro, Cajola Cristado, Rush Company, API Harrisover Limited, Sun Island Clothes, Carib Breweries, Demerara Distillers St. Kitts Limited, and Electrofab are back to work. Our largest employer in the export enclave manufacturing sector is Jaro, and it continues its retrofitting efforts to re-engage more of its employees under COVID-19 protocols. Since the reopening of our borders to regular commercial traffic on October 31st, 2020, our R.L. Bratter International Airport and the Vance Amory International Airport have recorded 284 inbound flights and 283 outbound flights. Passenger movements recorded 742 arrivals and 753 departures for a passenger throughput of 1,495. Our principal carrier so far is American Airlines. Other smaller airlines, such as SVG Air, Trans-Anguilla, Air Sunshine, and a range of other private charters have come and gone. LAAT, I am advised, is due to begin a Saturday service to the island very shortly, and Ms. Raquel Brown from Tourism could perhaps give more in relation to that. Just recently, the government took a decision to forego LAAT's debt to St. Kitts and Nevis in the region of some $11 million. We did this on the request of the liquidator, taking into account LAAT's ill health and as part of our commitment to regional integration and regional travel. We accept that LAAT is the largest carrier supporting intra-regional travel, and without LAAT there is a major void that has a significant impact on the ease of movement of citizens, residents, and visitors to the region. Mindful of the challenges that LAAT has faced, we believe that we must take this position in the best interests of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and the region as a whole. So far from the stats I've given, the air traffic has been modest in terms of loads, reflecting the international situation of a general low demand for travel, particularly of long duration. The opening up of our borders has facilitated the return of some of our nationals, permanent residents, and overseas students, among others. Our careful step-by-step approach has allowed us time to test our systems of control and take necessary corrective actions as appropriate. We anticipate improvement in passenger arrivals in 2021, given, among other things, the good news of the imminent availability of a vaccine. Several vaccines appear ready for human use, and there is optimism that in the medium term, short to medium term, there will be better control of the virus with the resultant recovery of the global economy. Indeed, the professionals are saying, until the situation with the pandemic is stabilized, put under effective control, there can be no sustainable recovery of the global economy. In the meantime, we must act appropriately by strict compliance with the non-pharmaceutical measures, such as the wearing of the mask, hand hygiene, physical and social distancing. The hosting of events with large crowds, particularly where persons will consume alcohol or drugs and engage in constant face-to-face or body contact, can lead to the spread of the virus. These events must be kept to a minimum, and better yet, they should be avoided. I have taken that counsel to myself, and accordingly I have advised the organizers of the annual Prime Minister's New Year's Gala that the event should be cancelled. This event would normally bring upwards of 500 persons in a single space at the Marriott Ballroom Hotel. I have concluded that it would not send the right signal to have such an event in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. I want to extend regrets to all the patrons and encourage persons to contribute the monies that they would have spent on this event to a church or to do a good charitable act in keeping with our all of society approach. We will face 2021 with greater enthusiasm and a higher confidence in the stronger and safer future. We take hope at the increasing confidence in the business community reflected in a number of developments. In spite of COVID-19, for this year so far, we have approved more business licenses than ever before in the history. Approvals for business license for the year ended 30th of October reached an all-time high of 773 licenses approved. For the year 2014, there were only 419 approvals. In 2019, we had 623 approvals. In April of 2020, there were only 4 approvals. I think that dramatized the impact of the pandemic and people's confidence and people's willingness to engage in any activity. Since April, we have seen remarkable recoveries. In 1 month, we reached as high as think of about 110 approvals. In some, more businesses are being formally set up than at any other time in history. This, in our view, goes well for increasing economic activity, jobs, and earnings. The second element of good news has to do from the housing market. The first mortgage program to which our government waives duty and customs service charge on building material has recorded 140 successful applications so far. This is the highest number of approvals under that program since 2014. This concession and duties and customs service charge provides a significant savings to persons who are ready to build their first residential property, and it is open not just to government employees, but to any citizen. So if you are interested in building, you can save a significant bit on the building materials by applying through the Ministry of Finance for concession under the first mortgage program. TDC housing project at Doas is expected to get started in earnest, I am advised, in 2020. And the Deputy Prime Minister brought me the news of this good development. The TDC development, though, is targeted at middle and high middle income persons who would wish to obtain their home. To facilitate that particular project, the government provided TDC with a concession of a 2.5% on the transfer, the stamp duties involved in this particular venture. I gather that pre-sales are going very well. We are prepared in order to encourage further activity in that field to extend similar support to locals engaging in residential construction. Fifthly, the Royal St. Kitts Hotel in Frigate Bay continues to demonstrate strong confidence in the government policy and the vibrancy of the economy. Mr. Zuliani continues to build out the Royal Plaza. The second project called the Cove is nearing completion and will bring an additional 24 rooms to our hotel stock. The Cove condominium project is expected to be completed in February of 2021. Mr. Zuliani has promised to start another investment in high-end luxury villas, and I anticipate that a groundbreaking will commence in December on this new villa development. Of course, the construction of residential properties, and any other property for that matter, means jobs for our people, money in their pockets, a decent living, and a boost in the economic activity through the purchase of goods and services. The sixth area of significance is that the government capital projects continue to be built out after an initial slowing in the period immediately after the advent of COVID-19. In the upcoming budget, we will advise of which of those projects will be continuing and of new projects to be started early in the new year. I want to turn to the STEP and the government auxiliary employees. The government is moving forward with plans for the regularization and transition of the STEP workers to government auxiliary employees. The STEP has approximately 3,000 plus employees assigned across the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Of this total, 1,811 employees are assigned to the public sectors, both in St. Kitts and in Nevis, and 1,261, I'm advised, are assigned to private sector actors. Following the June 5th general elections, a STEP Regularization and Pensions Reform Committee was immediately established to chart the way forward and to make recommendations to ensure these developments or the promises which we made to these workers would be fulfilled. I want to commend the work of the Accountant General, Mr. Levi Bratcher, who presides over that committee, and the committee has been deliberating in a very efficient way. They have to date submitted some 4 submissions for considerations to the Cabinet surrounding the establishment of the Government Auxiliary Employees Commission, a requirement of law, the operationalization of the new Contributory Pension Fund, the appointment of members to the Government Auxiliary Employees Commission, and regularization of the STEP workers. I can report that the members of the Government Auxiliary Employees Commission are now appointed. Dr. Henry Brown, QC, heads the commission. The other members of the commission approved by Cabinet are Mr. Winston Morris, an agriculturalist, Mrs. Torfrida Trester, human resource specialist, and Mrs. Sylvia Isaac, a retired nurse. To ensure during the transition that no migration of ghost workers takes place to the GAE platform, a comprehensive exercise of employee verification was conducted by the Office of the Accountant General in collaboration with the government's Human Resource Management Department with assistance of the relevant line ministries and departments in St. Kitts and in Nevis. We are now satisfied that we can rely on the data. We have started discussions with the STEP workers about a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. New hours of work have been provided, and they are to be strictly adhered to. Those who do not work will not be paid unless their absence was approved for a legitimate purpose, such as illness. We are working hard to elevate the level of respect, the pride, discipline, and industry among all step workers. And it is important that we do so, since being a small island state, our human resources is critical and vital. And that is why, too, at the level of the public sector, we have embarked on discussions which Ambassador Amri is heading regarding, as it were, pay for performance, how we can introduce more efficiency in the public sector. The values and the positive attitude towards work are critical to the successful development of our young nation, and the need to be complemented with a zeal for excellence in all that we do as a people. Recently, we had some high anxiety relating to the significant slippage of land and the collapse of a road in a section of Fort Tyson Rise at Frigate Bay. My government sympathizes with those affected by this event, especially the property owners and their tenants. We have responded quickly to that matter. The public interest, of course, was and is to minimize loss of lives and injury to persons, and of course, to mitigate avoidable damage to property. I must commend the agencies and departments of the government, such as NEMA, Public Works, and the Department of Social Services for their quick response to this situation. I acknowledge that the Department of Social Services has extended support to some tenants who became displaced. The department also provided food and other necessities to tenants and others who had become suddenly, unexpectedly displaced and indisposed. At this moment, I am advised that the area has stabilized, and some homeowners and tenants have returned to their residences. I'm advised that Mr. Alexis Hazel has provided assistance with the reinstatement of the road, and all residents are now able to access their homes. Our gratitude is extended to Mr. Hazel for his public spiritedness. The general situation is now one of calm. The Public Works has estimated that the damage can be put in the region of $7 million EC. In order to accommodate VAT days, VAT the sales, the government will pay its salaries on Thursday, December 17th, 2020. Just about 1,200 non-establishment workers will also receive their honorarium on December 17, 2020. Some time ago, the honorarium was discontinued by the former administration, and the wild promise that their situation would be regularized. Having taken note of the injustice to that category of government employees, we are determined, until their situation was regularized, we will pay them the honorarium, which I gather is about 2% of their annual accumulative wages. I want to call for discipline on the upcoming VAT days, and to urge all shoppers and suppliers of goods and services to practice physical distancing, the wearing of masks, and the practice of good hand hygiene. As per usual, the security forces will be put on full alert to maintain law and order. And we really want to have the best behavior on that days. The overcrowding, the rushing, and all those ill-advised behavior will not be encouraged. We are asking that all suppliers of goods and services put the requisite protocols in place to ensure good order is maintained at the premises. And it can be done. I gather a good model had been one exercised by TDC recently at one of their sales. They were able to manage that activity by involving the security forces. The security forces stand ready to assist any business place in making the appropriate determinations to ensure that all will go well. The 2020 hurricane season ended thankfully on the 30th of November 2020. We are grateful to the Almighty God that we had no serious storm visiting our islands. Members would recall, members of the public, that this season was predicted to be one of the most active in history. Indeed, we exhausted all the names and had to then turn to the Greek, as it were, system to find additional names for hurricanes. With all that activity, we have been spared, and we are happy for that. Someone said amen. I commend the vigilance of the staff at NEMA, who remained alert and aware as systems developed and kept the nation informed throughout the period. Of course, the monitoring of storms has always been a collaborative exercise involving NEMA, the Met Office, and several other entities, so I commend them all. We will continue to build up the resilience of our country, thereby mitigating our vulnerabilities to climate change and the associated more dangerous hurricanes. Finally, allow me to record my appreciation to the people of Constituency 7, who in 7 general elections, starting in 1993, elected me to serve as their Member of Parliament. In 2020, they gave me my strongest mandate. I owe a debt of gratitude to them and the people of this country generally. I shall continue to give yeoman service to my beloved people and country. And on this note, I would pause to allow the representatives of the media to pose any questions on these matters that have been raised. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good
Ken
afternoon.
Batt from SKN Newsline. My questions will be brief. First is, want to find out what kind of priority would the government be given to its good governance legislative agenda during 2021? What can the citizens of this country expect? Secondly, can you give an update on the status of the Integrity Commission? Third is, can you give an idea as to what kind of success has been achieved so far under the CBI program since the changes that were made in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic? And one last one for now, for round one. Are you satisfied that all of the procedures that were to be implemented at the ports, especially the airport, are being followed? And if there have been any gaps, would the public be told about these gaps and what is being done to resolve those gaps, if any? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other question? We'll take a few and then we will come to deal with these matters. I'll ask the Attorney General, when the time comes, to lead on the good governance agenda. I'm not sure I'm seeing Mr. Lescan of the CIU here, so I'll have to speak to that one unless he comes. And then the protocols at the airport. The protocols at the airport, I will ask Minister Grant to address that. Please proceed.
Lashan Dixon, Secretary News Observer. Good day, good afternoon. What will be some of the government spending areas, main priority spending areas for the next year's budget? And also, you spoke about St. Kitts and Nevis having access to a COVID-19 vaccine when one is developed. How will that be distributed in the Federation, and how will people who are skeptical of taking the vaccine be convinced to do so?
Good afternoon, Devon Cornelius, WinFM. Regarding the CBI program, what is the revenue collected over the past 5 years from CBI? What is the number of passports issued to new citizens and their demographics over that period, and what areas have these funds from the CBI been invested in? Regarding the Royal Caribbean vessels, they were scheduled to arrive the week of November 22nd for safe harboring. Can you please provide an update on that? And lastly, regarding the works that are happening at Timothy Hill, would you be able to provide an update in regards to the environmental impact assessment?
Good afternoon, Alicia Daniel Blake, Sugar City, 90.3 FM. Prime Minister Harris, with your leave, I would like to first read Mr. Valentine Thomas's questions before I read mine. The questions from Valentine Thomas: does the government have anything in place for the returning students who are currently without jobs? 2, seeing the effects that COVID-19 had on the tourism industry, is there anything in place for the citizens or residents, such as taximen, the men who have the monkeys for the visitors to take pictures, and people who apply aloe vera to the tourists who are currently employed? And my questions: I had posed a question at a recent COVID-19 briefing, and Mr. Samuel had informed that the task force had been working on making the cost of quarantine more affordable to persons who would like to return to St. Kitts and Nevis. Is it possible to get an update on that? Because currently the hotel that is being proposed, the initial hotel, that is the OTI hotel, is booked out, and as well the Royal St. Kitts Hotel is of a much greater cost, and he had said that they had been looking into getting perhaps guest houses. Is it possible to get an update on where they are at in terms of that? And 2, it has come to my media house's attention and information that certain individuals have been exempted from full quarantine or having not to quarantine at all. The instance that we have heard of is that certain individuals from the region came here to work on a particular project, and they were advised that they would only have to quarantine for 1 week, as well as there has been an instance of an individual who has stated unequivocally that he does not have to quarantine. The arrangement was that if he does not spend more than 5 days, he would be exempt as long as he left the Federation. When he returned, he would be exempt from quarantine. Prime Minister, I would like to get your feelings on these two instances, because this is a veritable way for communication, for the community spread of COVID-19 to enter the Federation. Because whereas most persons have to spend...
Well, maybe I should stop you before the untruth gets, spread. As far as I'm aware, and at least up to Monday when the cabinet met, that is yesterday, we confirmed that there is no exemptions to the rules of quarantine as determined by our health professionals. I would advise that not everyone is here for 14 days. And therefore, in that respect, you can't quarantine for 14 days if you are not here for a 14-day duration. So there will be peculiar circumstances. But we have the medical chief of staff who is here, and we have the CMO, and they will be able to deal with those matters. But quarantine is effectively in place. And if anyone, for example, bypass them through illegal entry, because that would be the only way, and they are discovered, the quarantine is always then imposed, as has happened recently. We make no exception. In that regard, let me draw the situation, for example, of Ambassador Ian Partridge-Libert. He went abroad. He came back. He was in quarantine. First time I'm seeing him. First time. No exemption was made for him, notwithstanding his position as a senior official of this government. We are not in the habit of picking and choosing. And certainly, the systems as they relate to quarantine are determined and executed by the professionals. For the record, none of the professionals associated with quarantine, with the matters of the task force, have drawn to the attention of the Prime Minister of the government, to my knowledge, that they had given special waivers. But when the CMO comes to speak on the vaccine, she will have a say on that. And we have Dr. Wilkinson who will speak on that. So I just wanted to pause you, lest as you continue, other people begin to pick up that and the misrepresentation would be logged on too.
Prime Minister, is it possible that this information would have slipped through the cracks?
Well, I don't know. Mr. Brandy would be a better detective than I am. What I would say to you, though, if you have very specific information, and I appreciate the sensitivity, you should, at the end of the press conference, perhaps relay that to the proper authorities, which would be the CMO and the Chief Medical Officer and any one of those personalities. Indeed, you're standing next to the Permanent Secretary of Health, Dr. Lois Stapleton Harris. So any of these persons would be part of that system, and I would prefer you speak to them and give them the full knowledge so that they can investigate the particular circumstances. But there is no information to our knowledge.
Thank you.
Carla Berge, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation. Just a couple of questions. Can we get an update on the Old Road Rehabilitation Project? I think it was supposed to be finished sometime this year, well, this month. Regarding the fish poisoning cases, the statement that was issued said that the fish weren't from our waters. Can we get an idea of where they were from and what exactly was the cause of the poisoning? And is there any more information that can be offered with regards to Liet arriving shortly?
Repeat that last one, please.
Any more information that can be offered with regards to Liet's arrival shortly?
Thank you. Okay, thanks much for those first batch of questions. In relation to the good governance agenda, and perhaps it'll be good if there was a specific matter that is on the mind that we could know. Good governance is a broad matter, and in fact we have been working the good governance matter like no other government before us has. The very coming here in this press conference is an act of good governance, where the people, through the media, have the opportunity to interrogate the leadership of the country on any matter which they see fit. The fact that I've come and I've said in my opening statement that come the 15th of December, we will have the budget debate is an act of good governance because it relates to the government accepting that the law of the land has to be respected, and we are coming ahead of time in terms of doing what we needed to do with respect to the budget. There was a time not too long ago, in December of 2012, when the budget was postponed, and the budget was not heard until mid-2013. A special resolution had to be passed in the Parliament in an effort to correct that breach of law and breach of good governance. This has not happened since 2015. We have come way ahead of time. That is good governance at work. The fact that we have brought several other legislative matters to the Parliament related to accountability, relating to information sharing with our international partners, and tax matter and other matters, again, is an indication of good governance. And when objective observers have assessed St. Kitts and Nevis, they have determined that on the good governance agenda, St. Kitts and Nevis is number one, top of the class in the sub-region and among the top performers wider afield. The Rule of Law Index, the World Justice Report Rule of Law Index, you look at that and you hear what they have reported regarding the good governance agenda across some 8 indicators. When assessed, the composite result is that St. Kitts and Nevis stands ahead of other countries in terms of its performance and good governance. So for 2021, it is continuing to perfect that which we have been doing, going to the Parliament regularly, debating the matters of public interest, monthly press conferences of the Prime Minister, and even our Leadership Matters program. Those are models of good governance at work. And I would be brave enough to say that you can't find any other country that is ahead of us in the practice of good governance. Even our international allies would tell you that. We are performing, we are cooperating, we are delivering in accordance with the expectations. So good governance will always be alive. There was a time when for 26 months, a motion of no confidence could not be heard. Since 2015, we passed a law that set the time frame, I think it is 21 days, in which any motion of that matter must be debated in the Parliament. I say all these specific things for you to get a good feel for what it is, the good governance agenda, which we have already developed, and we have already been living, and we will continue to improve upon that. The good governance agenda expresses itself in the elections leading to the 5th June, when for the first time we opened up ZIZ for contending parties to have access and equal footing once the elections were announced. That is good governance at work. So the AG would add his 5 cents to that, because the legislative agenda is one, but is not the only aspect of a good governance. When we go to Parliament on the 15th, we are hoping that we will lay the report of the Director of Audit on the table. That is good governance. That is saying that the fiscal affairs of the Team Unity administration are being preserved and are being conducted in a manner that lead to their verification by an independent professional person. And we will read then what is the professional judgment of the Director of Audit and the way in which we conduct the business of the people. These are all expressions of good governance. It was we, as a Team Unity government, who brought a new model of legislation to give some substance to the working of the Public Accounts Committee, gave certain specific powers to the Public Accounts Committee to engage particular professional people at the level at which the interrogation could take place as part of the agenda of good governance. Good governance, we appreciate, is critical to our democracy, and we will do all that we can to foster it and to expand on it. In relation to the CBI program, since the changes that have been introduced, I would say that we are satisfied that the program is alive and well. We will say that the program, like every other area, has been impacted by the corona pandemic. Why this is so? The marketing efforts and strategies, which had hitherto been personal contact, if you will, going out in the various marketing places, engaging critical target markets, that of course had to be put on pause. And we have now been applying the technology. Indeed, on Thursday, I am to be engaged in an international conference in relation to the CBI, and that of course will help lift the profile of the market. We are satisfied in terms of the outcome, but we appreciate that there is significant room for improvement. And the Cabinet has, over the last couple of months, introduced a number of new elements that would add to the attractiveness of the CBI. Some of them have already had the necessary legislative force, and we are counting on the Attorney General by next week, Tuesday, I am advised, to have all the other SROs ready so that we can give full life to the expectations with respect to the performance of the CBI program. The question which was posed about how much revenue was collected over the last 5 years, I wouldn't be able to say. I wouldn't be able to say at this particular moment in time. The Financial Secretary, I don't know if she carries that figure. She says not in her head, not in mine either. But what I can say to you, that in the budget statement that will be read we will speak to the CBI program more frontally as a critical part of the way forward, and more information with respect to revenues would be available. And these figures really are not hidden, they are in the public domain, just that I wouldn't have time now to count back 5 years with any degree of reliability. And what areas have the funds been invested? We, while in opposition, had determined that the way in which the CBI funds were being operated was in contravention of the Constitution. And in particular, I think it was Section 69. Section 69 prescribes that all revenues should go, public monies should really go into the consolidated fund. And therefore, the monies of the CBI, like the monies collected at Inland Revenue, like the monies collected at our Customs and Excise Department, at the Office of the Accountant General, are part of a pool resource that go to finance the operations of the country. There have been some specific projects. The Alexandria Hospital in Nevis, the Monroe Tract that had come to the SIDF, and things like that. Those have been very specific, because at the time, that was how the fund had been operating. There have been projects, for example, the development of the second cruise pier, to which a portion, several millions, were in fact invested into that particular project. So we could point to these, but generally the CBI pool is part of the consolidated revenue. And so once it gets in there, it takes on a different form, and it provides the resources to assist. Has it been significant? Yes, it has been a significant part of government revenues since about 2012, 2013, 2014, thereon. It has been a significant part of that revenue. The matters to do, the main priority areas, I'm looking at those questions which I would want to deal with. The main priority areas for the budget, largely we will ensure that we keep the social safety net intact, that the social sectors such as health and education, that they are adequately resourced. We will want to pay attention to the economic infrastructure. Someone raised the question, for example, with respect to the completion of certain capital projects in Old Road, and we have projects in other places. All of these that are already at an advanced stage will continue. In our program, for example, we had provided this year for the construction of the health facility in St. Peter's. That will be ongoing work that will continue in the 2021 budget. The social infrastructure, anything that can help with the economy's growth, those things will be some of the priority areas. And of course, national security will get its fair share of resources and has been getting over time. I would ask the CMO and the medical chief of staff to deal with those matters that cover the healthcare.
In health workers and those that are at higher risk of contracting the virus, and those that are at higher risk of developing the severe form of COVID-19. Now, the person who posed the question went on to ask, how will skeptics be convinced? So when we are implementing any vaccine, it really begins by a massive public education campaign whereby the public will be told or will be updated as to all the facts there are about this vaccine. And so individuals will be able to consent, provide consent in terms of receiving same. And so The skeptics will be provided all the information there is regarding the vaccine, and hopefully everybody would realize that it's the way to go in terms of ending the pandemic. The availability of the vaccines is really the road to recovery from this pandemic. Now, in terms of the exemption from full quarantine, now, ladies and gentlemen, we continue to be guided by our health, our St. Kitts and Nevis, our national health and travel protocols, which clearly stipulates what pertains when an individual lands on our shores. And when you come into before you come in, you would have to complete the entry form. You would have to provide us a negative RT, that's the reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction COVID-19 test. This test should be done within 72 hours of travel, that is boarding the flight to St. Kitts and Nevis. And then you also would have to share your accommodation or the hotel where you will be staying. And that really is your quarantine site. And so Ocean Terrace Inn, Potworks in Nevis, Wali, they are quarantine sites whereby you will be confined to your rooms. Now, the Royal St. Kitts Hotel, Park Hyatt Hotel, Four Seasons Hotel, if you are staying at these locations, you can vacation in place, whereby you have access to COVID-19 approved services on these properties. So you're not confined to your rooms, however, you are confined to the hotel property. Well, I must also add that the Marriott Hotel is not officially opened. However, you can stay at the Marriott. You can opt to quarantine at the Marriott. Now, the Marriott Vacation Club is open, is operational, and you can vacation in place at the Marriott Vacation Club. So everyone who would have entered into the Federation since our borders reopened between October 31st and present would have gone to one of these sites whereby you are either confined to your room, quarantined in your room, or confined to the hotel or the accommodation site. There's a question about the cost of quarantine. I think I'll leave that to Mr. Abdia Samuel. Yes, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, if there's anything else to add to back me up.
I think Dr. Wilkerson will wait and come at the end. I would want to now invite the Financial Secretary to make an input in relation to the budget and any other the matters that would have come. And then we will have Minister Grant that will deal with some of the questions raised.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Good afternoon to all. Basically, for the budget, we remain to be positive in our outlook, as well as making sure that we spend the energy focusing on our people. As you have come to know, the budgets over the last 5 years have been very people-oriented, and so we would continue to keep that focus. Of course, we will continue to invest in areas as we respond to the issues related to COVID-19. However, we have taken a decision that we would be tending towards looking forward and looking towards recovery and transformation, rather than looking backwards in terms of what we have gone through in 2020. And so, heavy focus would be placed on expenditures related to infrastructure development, to spur on the transformation process that we have started, and also to recover from the blows that we experienced in 2020. National security would continue to be a focus. Our social safety net programs would be prioritized. We would also be looking towards strengthening our partnerships with our international partners, as well as strengthening the environment for spurring on entrepreneurship. As you would be realizing that the government has taken a determined decision to create a new ministry. And so we look forward to the exciting array of support that that ministry would put in place to support our creative and talented persons who would need assistance in terms of building that type of business. And so to the question that was raised earlier about students who are back and what we are doing about employment. And it is not necessarily a situation where we would expect that the government would provide all the employment that is possible in the country, but rather to look inwards, to look towards our skills. If these persons have gone out and trained, how can we develop those skills and transform them into entrepreneurs who can then not only provide jobs for themselves, but employ other persons as well as make a living, generate livelihoods beyond the pockets of the state, actually become good taxpayers as well. So that was what I would want to add in relation to the outlook for the budget, and I'm sure that you would tune in on the 15th to hear more.
Thank you and good afternoon to all. I was asked to answer questions in relation to the protocols. What I would first say is that this government, we have expended in excess of $2.7 million, I think it is, to outfit and to retrofit the RLB International Airport. And this we did in conjunction and conformity with the Ministry of Health and the National Task Force. We established a waiting area, but what I would say is that the waiting area, principally which was commissioned, has not been in operation essentially because it was essentially a tent, and we had to fly in a covering area because when the air conditions were put in, it was recognized that it was drawing a tremendous amount of heat. That has now been completed, but in the interim, we went into Plan B and created a waiting area which has sufficed for the moment. The travel requirements, as you pretty well know by now, you have to have the RT-PCR test submitted 72 hours of traveling to St. Kitts. Upon arrival, you go through a screening process organized by the Ministry of Health, and also you go through the immigration and customs area. We have trained in excess of 40 plus, there are 40 plus taxi operators operating at the RLB International Airport. And once you exit the area of the RLB airport, you go into one of those taxis which have been certified by the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. What I would say is that once you're in that taxi, which has been outfitted with Velcro, etc., the individuals will go directly to the appointed hotel. They do not stop at any other place other than the hotel, meaning you don't stop to go to an ATM, you don't stop to get something to eat, you go directly to the hotel. If you are going to Nevis, You go either from the Christoph Harbor or you go from the Reggae Beach into Nevis, and then the necessary protocols over in Nevis will take place. If you're vacationing in place, you're in your hotel for the first 7 days. On the 7th day, you are again tested with the RT-PCR test. If negative, you can go to certain approved tours. At the moment, we have tours. For example, you can go to Timothy Hill. You have a bathroom stop at Port Zante. You have the historical tour of Bastille, and you have Brimstone Hill and the Eco Park. The Eco Park has not been determined as yet for tours, but that is to be determined shortly. Once you're staying beyond the 14 days, then you can leave your hotel and integrate into the community after you've taken another test, the RT-PCR test, to ensure that you are negative. A question came up before. If you're vacationing in place and you're leaving before the 14th day or even before the 7th day, you again take the RT-PCR test before you leave St. Kitts. The other issue I think I would raise is the issue of the 2 ships that were destined to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. That's the Rhapsody of the Seas and the Grandeur of the Seas. And you may be wondering why they haven't arrived as yet. And I would call this a moving target. Of course, the priority is to ensure the safety and the security and the health of our citizens. And because we've been going, as a matter of fact, we've been having daily contacts with Royal Caribbean to ensure that when they arrive, all the necessary protocols are in place. What I would say is that the arrival of those 2 ships is in the making very shortly. The last issue that we have under consideration is with regard to a matter of sludge, which was destined, which is needed to be deposited from the Rhapsody and the Grandeur. We have taken a decision that no sludge will be taken into our country, and so that they have to deposit this sludge in another country before they arrive. Once they have satisfied our requirements of that, then both ships would be able to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. The issue of the Alarub vendors and LIAT, I would leave to the CEO of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Raquel Brown, to answer. I think I've answered all the other things that I needed to, and I leave those other 2 questions for the CEO of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Minister Grant. In relation to the matter of Alarub vendors and our primate vendors that the St. Kitts Tourism Authority licensed to operate, in addition to craft vendors, they have not been issued new license for the 2021 season, for the reason that their operations are not approved for phase 1, as are other operations in phase 1, for example, other tours and attractions. So for phase 1, because we've been guided in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, we are trying to ensure that we mitigate any spread. There are many operations that support our tourism product, but they have not been approved for phase 1. As it relates to LIAT, LIAT will be coming and providing only Saturday service to the Federation at RLB. It will be on Saturdays only, and the flight numbers are 350 and 353 from Antigua, and from Barbados 351 and outbound 352. The reason for this is that they're trying to restart service to the Caribbean. They had a announcement today via press release. They can only provide one-day service to St. Kitts at this point in time because they're limited by 4 aircrafts. So at this point in time, we have Saturday service to help with connectivity for the region Caribbean travelers. Thank you.
Thank you. I would want to invite Dr. Cameron Wilkinson to address one of the issues of a health nature that was raised. And then we will have the Deputy Prime Minister.
I think the matter you wanted me to address was that of the quarantine, that the person asked about whether or not there were any exceptions. And we have had many discussions at the task force level and even cabinet in addressing these matters. And once we follow the principles, it's very easy to answer the question, because we've said, number one, the safety and security of the country is our highest priority. And secondly, the protocols are without exception. And so even when persons come requesting, putting special situations to us, we say that the protocols are enforced without exception. And so I'm not aware of anyone who would have entered the Federation without being quarantined. However, we also urge the general public to help us, because we are not safe unless everyone is safe. And so if you are aware of anyone who is supposed to be in quarantine, you need to report it to the task force. And we've said it even at the briefings, that if you know that somebody came in on the 1st of this month, and you see them walking around on the 3rd, you need to report this, okay? Because quarantine is not a maximum security prison. And so the same way persons can break out of a maximum security prison, they can break out of the OTI or, you know, the other hotels where persons are supposed to be quarantining. I'm not saying that this happens, but there might be loopholes in anything. And so if you're aware that this is happening, you need to let us know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have the Deputy Prime Minister. And then there was a question on the fish poisoning, which I'll ask Mark Williams. He heads the Marine Department for the government of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Good afternoon to everyone. Indeed, relative to the Old Road Bay project, we are behind on that particular project, but there are several reasons as to why the project hasn't been completed to date and as earlier envisaged. The contractor undertaking that particular work there has had some issues with getting the 10-ton rocks from the quarry. You would recognize that on the seaside, rocks are being used to prevent the seawater from eroding the coastline for the new road. The design is such that there are rocks required of several different sizes. When they were mining for the 20-ton rocks, they were able to find those quite easily. However, the process requires blasting at the quarry to get the rocks of the current sizes, of the needed sizes. There is no exact science to doing so that when you blast, you get rocks of different sizes, different tonnage. As such, as I explained, we have had some difficulties with getting the 10-ton rocks. However, the project continues, and as the rocks are mined, they are being transported to the site. Secondly, the consultants attached to that project reside overseas. Hence, COVID has affected the project in more ways than one. Because the consultants are based overseas, they haven't been able to come in to provide the technical expertise that is needed on a regular basis. Before the onset of COVID, the consultants were visiting the Federation just about every 2 weeks. Now, you are required to do 14 days quarantine if you visit the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So it means that if they come, they have to stay, or if they do come, you have 14 days quarantine before they can visit the site. So that has affected the speed at which the contractor has been able to perform the work there. The other issue in terms of COVID and how it has affected the work there is that you would recall that there were some days that the entire Federation had been locked down. It therefore means that work had to come to a halt for a period of time. The work has since continued. It has also been affected by adverse weather conditions. There are times that due to lots of rain, the work there couldn't go on as we would have wanted it to do so. What I would end by saying, though, is that the work at Oldwood Bay is substantially completed. Substantially completed to the extent that there have been times that it has become necessary for the road to be opened for traffic to traverse along the road, and that has taken place. Therefore, persons are already seeing the benefits of this new road, be it that the current road has been blocked due to traffic accidents, rocks falling from the hillside, or we have had an accumulation of water in times of heavy rains, and the road was opened on all of those different occasions so that persons traversing back and forth were able to do so without being hindered. Hence, as I said, we are seeing the benefits of the road, and so the money which the government has invested in that road, those are monies which have been well spent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark Williams. I'm not sure if Abdias is here. Is Abdias here? He is?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. With respect to the area of where the fish were caught in terms of the recent fish poison incident, we have not been able to pinpoint the area. However, because of the tests that were done, there were low levels of cadmium and lead. Cadmium and lead are normally associated with volcanic islands. So what we have deduced is that the fish were caught outside of the territorial sea, which can be the exclusive economic zone of St. Kitts and Nevis and beyond. So this is what we have so far, and till we get any further information, we can update you further.
Thank you very much. Is there any further requests for questions? I would just want to indicate, with respect to those who provide services, the primates, operators, we have the poverty alleviation program, and so those who are unable to ply their trade in a normal way can make application to that program. You bring along a letter from the Ministry of Tourism indicating that you were such a participant. I'm almost certain that you then would be able to access the PAP as part of a compassionate response to the dislocation having to do with the COVID-19 fallout. And we'll, of course, look to see what further support, if any, one could provide.
Just one question, Mr. Prime Minister. Can you provide an update on the status of the Integrity Commission?
AG will deal with that one. Is there any other questions? Hold AG, we have one further question. Sorry. I said one, but it may be more than one. I didn't intend to preempt you. We have one questioner, I should have said, rather than question.
Alicia Daniel Vick, Sugar City. Once again, this information has also been relayed in terms of the STEP workers. Some have reported that they have not been paid for as long as 6 weeks, and these would be among those who are a part of the program to become civil servants. So we were just wondering what is the position with that. And also there were some suggestions in terms of how the cost of quarantine and even in terms of departure could be alleviated. Prime Minister, I know you usually say don't compare with the other islands, but it has come to our attention that Antigua has removed the departure tax in terms of persons within the CARICOM bubble. And also, that could be one possible way of reducing the cost for residents, because some of us, for example, would have to travel in terms of medical, getting medical assistance outside of the Federation, and certain other emergency situations that would mean that whereas we are doing pretty well here, they would still have to leave our shores for certain situations. So maybe the government could consider that as one way of making the cost more affordable, as well as in terms of the hotel tax for persons who would be staying in some of these resorts. For example, the Royal St. Kitts and the Marriott Hotel. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any further questions? Okay, what we will do, we will invite the Attorney General to speak on the IPL. We have Mr. Green, who is here from the STEP program, and he will speak to what reasons may exist why someone who works would not be paid. And I believe that, well, I don't want to preempt his response, but it's difficult to contemplate that unless the person did not work. The costs of quarantine for departure, I'm not sure of the Antigua model, but certainly there is no longer a CARICOM bubble, and therefore I'm not sure if the rest of it would follow. In our quarantine program, though, we do make exception in terms of the cost. We waive the costs or a portion thereof for senior citizens in particular, and for young people who would have come in and have made application indicating that they are unable. We have in the past provided that support to persons, especially if it is a case of medical treatment that took them overseas. So that element is built into our program. I would say that we can look at the other areas that you have raised. Hotel tax, I'm not sure, but we will look at them all. And by the time we get to the budget, we will, or before, we certainly can give a response. Our quarantine costs, though, compared to others, is manageable and highly competitive. Obviously, most persons will want to pay zero, give them free. It is not possible. Nor could it be reasonable that at a time when the government revenues will be at the lowest ebb, to no fault, of the taxpayer and no fault of the government, a consequence of an external event, an exogenous shock, to wit, the COVID-19 pandemic, monies, taxes are at the lowest ebb, that people could contemplate that any government would be able to pay for quarantine services for them. Persons of their free will would have left the country and determined when they will come back. And so we will help where we can, but again, we have to be prudent in exercising our discretion over the financial resources. The question was asked, the Attorney General just reminded me, with respect to additional quarantine rooms, and the answer is yes, additional quarantine rooms are available. Some of the facilities or providers of this room have agreed to charge the same price as at OTI. I think it was Ms. Daniel who also asked about guest houses. I believe that the task force has approved at least 2 additional facilities, guest houses if you will, to be able to accept persons for the purposes of quarantine. So we are having positive development in that area. If there are other facilities who wish to have their accommodation be considered, there's a process of application to the task force that will be looked at and a determination made. We want facilities that are fit for purpose. I think that would be the principal concern, that it can provide a safe place in which people can, as it were, comply with the quarantine for a 14-day period. Security, of course, will always be a requirement because we cannot rely solely on the honor system, and we have to ensure that we use our best efforts to deal with all reasonable and foreseeable circumstances. The Honorable Attorney General is here, and he will deal with the matter of the IPL and any other matter that is in his domain. And then we will call upon Mr. Green, who is the CEO at STEP, to address the matter of workers who claim that they haven't been paid. I don't know if you had asked them whether they had work. Sometimes it's the work and the pay that have to be linked.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, and good afternoon to everybody. The Integrity in Public Life Commission has been fully operational and is fully funded by a subvention from the Ministry of Finance, so that there is in charge the commission, a chairperson in the place of retired Justice Ms. Pauletta Lance, and she is ably assisted by Mr. Freddie Knight and by Ms. Buddy, who make up the commission. There is facilities housed at the Lil Walwyn building on Liverpool Road. The law has been in place and has been operationalized. There has been a meeting with the members of the civil service last year. There is every intention that there be a follow-up meeting with members of the public service, and all those will be required to submit a declaration of their assets to the Commission once a date has been set for that to happen. So the commission is in place, it's fully operational, and there is now the need to establish a date for declarations to be submitted to the commission, as it was. I just wanted to add to what the Honorable Prime Minister said in relation to good governance, because the IPL is considered one of the tenets by which we would be judged in terms of our good governance agenda. He did mention, and it must be stated, that our good governance agenda began, was motivated and mobilized, because prior to 2015, when the Team Unity administration came to office, we had gone through a period of 26 months when a motion of no confidence filed on the 11th of December 2012 was not brought to the floor of the Parliament at all. There was litigation, a court case, and that got a judgment in 2017 that clearly stated that this was a significant breach. The Team Unity administration placed before the Parliament legislation indicating by what time frame such legislation, such a filing of a claim, a motion, be brought before the Speaker. Some 21 days was established. And we are comforted to know that that has been tested in our Parliament, when in December of 2018, a motion of no confidence was filed, and it was heard within 7 days. So that we are proud of our record, that once we are tested, we will deliver accordingly on this good governance agenda. And as the Prime Minister said, we adhere to the rule of law. We are very proud of our standing in terms as we are ranked in our region and worldwide as to our adherence to the laws, to the Constitution, and generally we have shown that we will be following and have followed our good governance agenda as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Attorney General. My mind got a little agitated by Ms. Daniels' reference to possibly the tax in relation to stays for persons quarantining, and I wondered if FinSec, I could put you on this spot, whether you'd want to hazard a view with respect to that particular matter. And then we will have Mr. Green address the issue of this step.
Thank you, Prime Minister. The issue of quarantine and payments, from the Ministry of Finance's standpoint, we are aware that at least the facilities at OTI are heavily subsidized by the government. There are no tax elements in the cost to quarantine persons. We actually subsidize, and the primary amounts that are paid are actually for the payment of the use of the facility. Government takes care of the utilities, including water, electricity, internet access. The costs associated with use of the other facilities, I must admit that at this point in time, that would have to be investigated, but at least the OTI facility, for sure, there is no taxes that are paid by quarantine persons.
Mr. Green, and just to add, the government pays the cost of security at OTI. and it is a significant cost, I'm advised.
Good afternoon. The answer to that question is no. We do not know of anybody. I don't know of anybody. I've just checked also with the Accountant General. We do not know of anybody who, in the public sector or private, who would have worked for 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks, and they have not been paid. We have adopted a policy for some time now, perhaps over the last 2-3 months, where we have said, based on the instruction of the Prime Minister, that you will be paid for the hours that you work. And so if you don't come to work, you would no longer be paid. If you do not have a good reason for being absent, you will not be paid. If you want to come to work from 8 to 10, 7 to 9, you will be paid for the hours that you work. We have communicated that to every government department. We have communicated that to all our cleanup groups. We have gone around the country speaking to all the persons. It is possible, however, that if somebody asks for a transfer, or they may leave one employer and decide that they want to go somewhere else. And while we are trying to place the person and they're not working, we do not pay for anybody to stay at home. Even if we are waiting for a transfer from one employer to another, and if that takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we are not going to pay you. We're not paying for persons to stay at home while you're waiting. So I would say that I don't know of any instances. I do know of persons not being paid if they don't work, but we now have persons who go out in the field. We call them field verification officers, and they are checking not just field persons, but private businesses, even government offices, to make sure that the information we get on timesheet is accurate. And if that information cannot be verified, we don't just stop paying somebody like that. We go out there again, we send somebody else, verify it, and if persons are not working, they're not paid. And so that would be my answer to the question. Okay?
Mr. Abdias.
Yes, good afternoon all. And I guess, Prime Minister, you want me to address the matter of the quarantine, correct? And yes, we have gotten an additional 10 self-contained apartments that persons will be able to access for $500. That should be coming on board as of next weekend, not this weekend. Hopefully, by this weekend, we should have a 17-room guest house available for this upcoming weekend. So hopefully by then, we will have these available for the cost of $500. And as the Prime Minister said, we also engage in a number of other real estate companies that are making some rooms available in the near future. Would it be for $500? We don't know. The negotiations are ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any further requests? We are about to wrap up at this point in time. So I want to say thank you to the representatives of the media for coming out and helping us to promote the good governance agenda by your involvement and your questioning today. I want to thank the members of the cabinet, and the senior officials of the government who have come and had added their voice to the issues that matter to the people as posed by the members of the press. So again, thank you very much, one and all, for tuning in. Tonight, we will not have an edition of Leadership Matters. I am advised that the press conference will be aired in its stead. So those who did not get a chance to see it live will have another opportunity. Thanks again. Let us, sorry. Sorry, he wants me to speak at the church service on my birthday, which is Sunday the 6th. I shall not speak on that matter now. But again, to say thank you, to wish everyone well, and really let us do our very best to keep ourselves and our families safe. I must add that at times we get a little concerned when we in St. Kitts and Nevis query so much with respect to the protocols, and almost as if we are getting weary of doing good. We are admonished not to be weary in doing good. I listened to snippets of the news today, and it was what a different Christmas in America, in Europe, they will experience. People are being advised, do not visit anyone if you can this Christmas. Students are being advised, before you go home to your family, take a test. Take a test. Take note of your contacts and your involvement 14 days prior before you go home. And if you are not certain, please avoid going back to your families. These are important developments. It is an abnormal period of time which calls for a major discipline, perseverance, sticking to the right thing. And I hope throughout this day and the rest of the year, as we think about the things that we normally do, we remember that we have to do them differently. Carnival activities, if any, have to be done differently. It is not the right time to test faith. And this is what we are doing when we argue that we must do it this way, because this is how we normally do it. We are not in normal times. We are not in normal times. And if we are sensible enough, we must respond in a sensible way. A big argument in the US, Thanksgiving. For Thanksgiving, which traditionally would be a family event, what were the health people advising? Keep it on the low. Keep it on the low. No in dining. And as much as possible, do not invite people to your residences for Thanksgiving in America and elsewhere. And as you listen to what is happening, what people are now forced to do, you pray to God that the people in St. Kitts and Nevis are listening and are learning and understand that we have to continue to make some sacrifice to prevent us getting there. The country from being locked down again. For an entire month, United Kingdom went through a lockdown because people began to relax. Entertainers begin to say, well, we need to have our fun because this is a time when we must have fun. And interestingly, there was a piece that the science and the knowledge with respect to COVID-19 is still very much an evolving factor. And that it has not been long enough for the doctors and the scientists to determine what will happen down the road to those who are infected by it. What would be the consequence? Because it really has no history. It is learning as you go. We were first told persons who were minors, very few of them. And then we see situations where they too are part of that class of persons confirmed with COVID-19. So I just want to bring a gentle reminder. We are not yet over with respect to the pandemic. And we have to practice. It is not perfect. We are going to be caught sometimes without our masks. Or perhaps while we do not have it on our face, we have it close by. So you can go back to your car, go back to your bag, and you can find it and do the right thing. We need to heed the science. Even as the promise of the vaccine seems so near, all we are left with is our masks, is doing the hand hygiene, and the distancing. Again, let us understand, even as we think of that days, it is not worth it. It is not worth it to run to TDC or RAMS or anywhere to get the reduction in VAT. And somewhere along the line, what you save in VAT, you have to go pay the doctor. Mark, you will be for a good job. But I don't think in the end the maths would add up. So I just want to end on that note of caution, because as we get into the Christmas and the traditional carnival, persons tend to lose sight, not just of the message of Christmas, but lose sight of the imperative to continue to hold strain in terms of what we have been advised we must do. Do not let down our guard. Do not let us become creative again. So we want a Juve, so we spin a form of Juve. The science and the advice, where we can avoid these crowd, these occasions for congestions, that we should. Each of us must discipline ourselves. Each of us must make a determination what level of risk we are willing to expose ourselves to. So again, thanks for doing as well as we have done, and there is room for improvement. And I want us to hold each other to the highest standard of behavior in the context of COVID-19. Thanks again for tuning in. It has been another productive day. To God we give all glory. And we hope He continue to keep the people here in our federation safe, free. Thank you.